want to welcome you to the Knoxville Area Association of Realtors. We're celebrating this month 1 year in our new facility here, and we're really proud to be hosting this forum. I'm Jennifer Roach. I'm the Governmental Affairs Director here, and I get to interact with our wonderful East Tennessee and Knox delegation at the state level and our local elected officials across 12 counties here, which is what our association covers. Knox, Anderson, Blount, and down to the Carolinas and up to Kentucky. I'm going to turn this over to Representative Martin Daniel for him to kick off our transportation forum. Please welcome him.
Thank you, Jennifer. Test, 1, 2, 3. Thank you, and thank you for hosting this. We really appreciate you doing this for us. We want to get you all the maximum amount of information in the minimum amount of time, and toward that end, I can see we have several elected officials here, and if it's okay, I'll just pass around the mic. Also, TDOT officials and administrators, we appreciate you all being here. I'll just pass around the mic. You could tell us who you are and what you do, please.
Jeff Welch with Metropolitan Planning Commission, Transportation Planning Organization.
Steve Borden, Region 1 Director, TDOT. Eddie Smith, State Representative, District 13.
Larson J., Knox County Commission at large.
Len Jacobs, Knox County Mayor.
John Schoonmaker, Knox County Commission, District 5.
George Wallace, City Council at large.
Terry Frank, Anderson County Mayor.
Hi, I'm Hugh Nystrom, Knox County Commissioner for the 4th District, which is where we are right now. So glad to have you all here.
Thank you, and again, I'm Martin Daniel. I represent the 18th District, which is West Knoxville. This is Eddie Smith, represents what we might, is that the 13th District there? 13th District. You know, we're very fortunate here in Knoxville that we live in such a great place. There's been tremendous population growth over the past 20 years, and as you probably know, this also is one of the busiest freight corridors in the United States. So we have I-75 and I-40 that merge west of here, about 15 miles west of here. And then we have I-81 and I-40, which merge about 25 miles east of here. And that results in a tremendous amount of cargo and truck traffic that comes through Knoxville, which is great. It gives us a chance to interact in commerce and do business with these people who might want to buy gas or stop at our restaurants or whatever they might want to do, sleep in our hotels, but it results in heavy traffic. And so unless we want to spend our lives in this kind of traffic, which is I-40 near Walker Springs, you're probably aware that this happens every day about 4 o'clock out on I-40. So I've asked Jeff Welch and Steve Borden to come here today, and Eddie Smith, who serves on the Transportation Committee, to come here and tell us a little bit about what's involved in planning roads. We just want to be assured that we're moving forward and taking care of our planning needs, and with regard to road development. A few facts and figures just to start with. Knox County has experienced tremendous population growth. People understand that, realize that this is a great place to live. They're moving here in a pretty steady pace. You can see the 1990 census of Knox County, 335,749. Currently, 2017, closest we have, 455,000 people live here. 2030 projection is 526,000 people. So we have to be ready for all these people and all their cars. With regard to the Tennessee gas tax, any conversation regarding roads, we have to look at the funding source. And the Tennessee gas tax basically funds all improvements and developments of roads here in Tennessee. It's dedicated funding. So the gas tax, funds from the gas tax go directly to the highways. It was first recommended by Governor Austin Peay in 1924, and at that time, the tax was 2 cents. Tennessee has a pay-as-you-go system. We haven't had debt on our highways since 1990. So we can't develop or make improvements or maintain unless we have the funds in the bank. But see, the federal gas tax was instituted in 1932, 1 cent per gallon. Let's take a look at the history of gas tax changes. You'll see in 1923 it was 2 cents, increased up to 1981, 9 cents. And notice also the average U.S. gas prices over on the far right-hand column. So it gives you an idea of how much the taxes have increased in relation to the price of, average price of gasoline. 1989, 20 cents per gallon. That tax was not adjusted until 2017, and now it's 26 cents per gallon. Where do we stand in relation to other states? We're still pretty low, 31. We rank 31 with regard to gasoline tax. I'm glad I don't live in California. And diesel tax, we're also at 34th. At this point, I want to introduce Eddie Smith. Eddie, if you'll come on up.
Well, I appreciate you all being here. I want to, part of what today's purpose that we wanted to go for, because we have a lot of new county commissioners, a new county mayor, we've got some new city council members that were elected last year. We'll have a whole new crop of city council members and a new mayor elected next year, is basically to set the stage for where we are so everybody has the same information. But it's also looking at the growth. So you saw the slide a minute ago of Knoxville's anticipated growth. I think those numbers are low, based on a lot of things we're hearing out of ECD. They are expecting the Knoxville metropolitan area to grow by about 250,000 residents. So that's our entire metropolitan area. That's a lot of strain on our infrastructure. Now, we did do the Improve Act last year, so to just set the stage, every penny of the gas tax raises about $31 million for the state, and every penny of the diesel tax is almost $10 million. I think it's 9.8 on the slide. So we raised the diesel tax by 10 cents and the gas tax by 6 cents. That's about $250 million a year, give or take. There'll be some years it's up, some years it's down. But we have a $10.3 billion backlog. Now, the reason the backlog exists, those are projects that were already identified, that were already put on the plan by the legislature, but they were never funded. So you talk about unfunded mandates. That was a $10 billion unfunded mandate for TDOT that past General Assemblies had put on them. But in that, there were 972 projects, of which 700 of those were bridge projects. The reason that's important, down I believe it was near Chattanooga, there is a bridge that goes across a body of water. Every single day in the Chattanooga area, a bus with students goes across that bridge. That bridge is a wooden bridge. It is, I think it was 70 years old, a 70-year-old wooden bridge. How many of you all would want your kids going to school every single day on a heavy bus, loaded down on a wooden bridge? I can tell you I've got a 12-year-old and an 8-year-old, and I don't. So that's why we work to do what we did with the Improve Act, because it's about our kids. I just left the Realtors Association, and here I am at the other Realtors Association, the Tennessee Realtors. And I expressed to them, everything that we need to be thinking about as elected officials. Are we leaving our state and our city better for the next generation and the one to follow it than what we inherited? I tell everybody this story because it's true and it's what's guided me for the last 4 years, and then I'll move on. When I was out knocking doors 4 years ago, I knocked on the door of a 92-year-old World War II veteran. After talking to him for a few minutes, he looked at me and he said, "Son, it's up to you and your generation to figure out how to fix all of this or to tear it down and start over." He said, "Every decision that my parents' generation made," talking about his parents, he said they made with you in mind. He said, "My generation made decisions with your parents in mind, and your parents made decisions with themselves in mind." I'm committed, and a lot of my colleagues are committed to making decisions that are going to leave this state and leave our communities better for our kids and our grandkids than what we inherited. And that's one of the reasons why we're here today, is talking about our roads. Nobody wants to, how many of y'all want to live in Atlanta? That's what I thought. If we don't start thinking and planning now, that's what we're going to be sitting in. We're going to be sitting in traffic. How many of you all live south of the river? Does anybody live in South Knoxville or Blount County? Do y'all remember when the rock slide happened a couple of years ago and Alcoa Highway was down to one lane? I don't care if you left on Tuesday, you might get there on Wednesday. Traffic was backed up that much. That's not what we want for our community, because if they can't move goods and services, industry's not going to move here. So that's Big Table kind of set the stage of why we're here today and why it's important for us as a community, not a Republican thing, not a Democratic thing, but as a Knoxville community, how we start thinking about solving our transportation issues going into the future. So the distribution of the state fuel tax, TDOT, out of all of the money that is kept on the state level, about $500 million will go to TDOT, $190 million goes to the counties, about $96 million goes to cities, and $13 million goes to the general fund. Now the reason that money goes to the general fund, that money it goes to the general fund to go in ECD. So Economic and Community Development receives that money so that they have money when they need to do immediate road projects. Let's say we go out here in East Knoxville where they're building the new industrial park, and a big manufacturing company wants to move in, but they need interstate access. Well, rather than the county having to come up with that money or TDOT having to find that money, ECD can use some of that money to do quick access. TDOT also has a last mile fund that they have, and Steve will talk a little bit about that. But that's kind of how the distribution of taxes works. TDOT's budget, as you see on the slide, I'm going to go through these quickly because most everybody in the room, as I look around, has probably heard this at some point. TDOT's budget's about $1.9 billion. We receive about $1 billion from the federal government through their transportation plan. The state tax is about $844 million, and then the local portion is about $34 million. The Improve Act, I kind of talked a little bit about that and how that has helped as we start working towards that backlog. But here's what it's done for Knox County and for the city of Knoxville. You can see that Knoxville and Knox County is receiving about $700,000 to $900,000 more in each entity. So the city is getting, I think, $900,000, the county is getting about $700,000. And the reason that's important, and you all heard Mayor Burchett talk about this a lot, and I know Mayor Jacobs is now grappling with this as well. The county was able to pave about 50 miles a year with their current funding, but they had over 2,000 miles of roads in the county to pave. So if you did the math, we were on the 80-year plan. Every 80 years, your road would get repaved. But how many of y'all think your roads can wait 80 years to get resurfaced? So that's where this is helping Knoxville and Knox County in the immediate future. Looking at, one of the things, and this gets talked about a lot, the way we fund things in the state. So let's say we assign a project. We'll use Alcoa Highway. The first phase of Alcoa Highway was about $80 million, give or take, somewhere in there. Even though that's taken 3 years to do, all of that money had to be put on the front end. So we pay for an entire project up front because what we don't want to have happen is a downturn happens and we've spread that out. We're going to pay $20 million this year, $20 million next year, $20 million the next year, because we're not allowed to put a burden on the future General Assemblies with money. We have to allocate everything in 1 year. So TDOT has what they call obligations, and that's where, when you look at this slide, you can see Shelby County has about $1 billion in obligations, Davidson has $752 million, Knox has $646 million in obligations that are outstanding, that we've already set money aside as we're working on projects. So that's a lot of how we work as a state, that the money is paid completely up front for any project, even if it's a multi-year project. So, and the reason being is, and Steve once said it to me best, he said, we never want to get in a situation where we don't have the money in the third year to finish the last bit of project, and we have bulldozers sitting on the road for 2 years never moving. I can promise you, if you're an elected official in this room, you do not want those phone calls if we ever got into that situation. Here are the top 5 Improve Act projects in Knox County. I talked about Alcoa Highway. That one is already in there. The first phase is done. I believe phase 2 and phase 3 have been funded as well. But Interstate I-75 Emory Road to Raccoon Valley Road, that's basically a widening to 3 lanes up through there in that area. Because if you've ever come from the north into Knoxville in the morning, you better get you some McDonald's up past Emory Road, or you're going to be hungry trying to get to the office of a morning. Interstate 75, the interchange at I-640, 275, and 75, malfunction junction. Of an evening, if you all haven't been out around Knoxville, I encourage you over the next couple of weeks, drive different routes to work and home from work and just look at where things are backing up. But Interstate 640 can back up all the way to Paper Mill as they're trying to merge onto 75 going north. So fixing that entire interchange is going to be extremely important as we continue to grow, keeping in mind now in the back of your mind where our population is expected to grow. So that's where these projects are at. The urban growth in Knox County, State Route 131, that's about $62 million. The State Route 62 from Shad Road to State Route 131, that's widening Shad Road. And then Alcoa Highway, which is the Woodson Drive, that's the second phase of Alcoa Highway. So when you just look at those numbers, that's a lot of money being spent in just 5 projects in our county. And that's just what TDOT is doing. So I'm going to stop there and introduce, because I want, one of the things that Martin and I, as we met, that we wanted to kind of help set the stage. Everybody knows what TDOT does, but not a lot of people know how TPO, the Transportation Planning Organization, fits into this COP. So I want to introduce Jeff Welch, and then Steve Borden will follow him. And Jeff's just going to kind of help us with how TPO works, how everything gets identified, how they're working towards putting projects on the plan, but also how your constituents and our constituents can, if they see a problem, that they've got avenues to get that information to us so that we can start working on those. So ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jeff Welch.
I've impressed myself. I got this up without any assistance, so, especially with 60 sets of eyes looking at me. So, thank you very much for being here, Representative Martin and Representative Smith, for inviting me here today. As indicated, I'm Jeff Welch, the Director of the Knoxville Regional Transportation Planning Organization. And as indicated on the next slide, I just want to give you a little bit of background on the importance of long-range transportation planning. A little bit of our Mobility Plan 2040, which is where we look out at least 20 to 25 years of what our transportation needs are for our region. And then just hit a little bit about how we do transportation planning. The TPO, the Transportation Planning Organization, covers a much broader area than Knox County. And we are a federally mandated organization. These organizations have been in existence since the late mid-60s, and there are 11 what's officially called the Metropolitan Planning Organization in the state of Tennessee, from Memphis down to Clarksville to Jackson to Morristown. Our urbanized area, we encompass and engage in Anderson, Road, Loud, Blunt, and parts of Sevier County. That's what's defined as the urbanized area, is defined by the U.S. Census. And that is updated every 10 years, so every 10 years our urbanized area expands. The area that we must do transportation planning expands also. And the purpose and role of our organization is to ensure that there's coordination, there's comprehensive planning going on, and it's ongoing and continuous transportation planning going on throughout the urban area, so that things are not being done in one county and not necessarily impacting other counties. I'll show the slide next that sort of represents that. Our membership on the TPO exists with the counties that are listed there, and County Mayor Terry Frank from Anderson County is the vice chair of the TPO. Hugh Nygaard, for the commission chair for County Commission, will serve on the executive board. Mayor Glenn Jacobs will be serving on the executive board for the TPO. So we have an executive board and a technical committee made up of engineers and planners from these various jurisdictions. And the governor or his representative from TDOT serves on our executive board, and they serve on our technical committee also. And we have the TPO staff, which we are housed in our staff of the Metropolitan Planning Commission. I work for MPC, and we manage and operate and facilitate the transportation planning organization. Partner agencies, as indicated, is ETAD, county highway officials. So I have a representative on our board also. We are provided and overseen by TDOT and Federal Highway Administration, Federal Transit Administration, because we are more than just roads. We must look at all modes of transportation in our region. From public transportation to bicycles and facilities, streets and highways, and pedestrians. So structure is indicated there, as I briefly hit on, executive board, the technical committee, our staff, we have working groups, and we are engaged and having to engage the public. All of our meetings are public. We announce and public made. Our bylaws that we have are what dictate who serves on our executive board. Jurisdictions of 5,000 more population have a voting membership on the TPO executive board. So again, Alcoa, Oak Ridge, Clinton, Maryville, Lower City, Loudon all serve on our executive board, and the representatives from there and the mayors do. Then again, our technical committees, our engineers and planners that provide assistance and advice to the executive board. The executive board is the one that makes the decision, sets the priorities in our urbanized area, working closely with TDOT, Steve's staff, and staff in Nashville to identify the transportation needs. The legislature obviously sets a list of priorities, approves TDOT's projects. They come to us, we facilitate the dialogue and discussion about those needs, and then endorse and provide the necessary action that will get the projects moving. So why is long-range transportation planning important? As indicated, we must look at how 20 to 25 years, and our current long-range transportation plan moves to the year 2040. And this sort of gives you an orientation of how our region has grown over the last, since 1990. This was the urbanized area in yellow in 1990. Where it is, we grew urbanized from the perspective in year 2000, and then how we grew from 2000 to 2010. We grew by about 100,000 from an urbanized perspective from 2000 to 2010, but our land areas expanded significantly. See how much further we had spread out from Oak Ridge and Clinton, parts of Sevier County down to Tellico Village. The result of this growth that's been talked about by Representative Martin is we have, and this is a perspective of how we have grown here in East Tennessee in our urbanized area. If you look at 1950, we had about 150,000 people in our urbanized area, and encompassed about 23,000 square miles, or acres, excuse me. And then you go out to the year 1980, we had 285,000 people and 126,000 acres. Population density of 2.3 people. In 1980 and 1950 was 6.5 people per acre. Now, in 2010, urbanized population of close to 560,000, 280,000 acre, but our density is 2.0 people per acre. Very difficult, very expensive to provide transportation services to, when you look at low density. You have to build more miles of road. Transit becomes relatively inefficient when you're looking at that, density of population. Build more roads, you got to maintain those roads. People need to have mobility. People have to deliver their goods and products. Those are the roads. That's what has happened as we spread out. There's a public cost to that we are continuing to maintain. As Representative Smith, Knox County has approximately 2,000 miles of roadways, and they have to maintain that on a yearly basis. City of Knoxville about 800 miles of road, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. So very expensive to do. And this is a regional issue. This is a map that looks at our regional commuting patterns. And as you can see, the Knox County has about, looking at around 8,500 folks from Sevier County come into Knox County. Blount County, about 17,500 per day come into Knox County. Knox County sends about 15,000 people to Anderson County on a daily basis. This is a regional issue. It's not a Knox County issue because we are all connected through mobility, through roads and streets and highways. It's something that Knox County is not going to solve. That's why there's an important role, regional perspective. That's why TDOT is heavily involved in addressing these issues. That's why we need to be taking, and the role of TPOs to address these things from a regional perspective. So a lot of interactions went on between our jurisdictions. I know in Anderson County, Mayor Frank, from their perspective there, it's like a big sucking sound every evening, just people leaving Anderson County to go out to all the other counties. They would like to have them stay there and spend money. So it's just the factor that we're at. And Blount County is growing. Denzel is growing significantly. There's another 1,000 employees coming online in the next 12 to 18 months. The SDF facility in Anderson County, we're going to continue to be interactive. And just briefly on the regional demographics, this is how we are broken down. Just, Generation Z, about 25% of the population. The baby boomers, where I'm at, I represent about 26% of the population. Right now, in 2000, we're a bit higher population. This is going to continue to grow, and the mobility needs of these folks are changing all the time. The ability of the baby boomers, the ability of the greatest generation are outliving their ability to drive. How are they going to get mobile? How are they going to get to their goods and services? Generation Y and millennials don't have that desire to drive, but they still need goods and services. We need to be aware of that and we need to be able to address that, those issues. So, our mobility plans are But you know, our mobility plan is to look at the region over the next 23 years. Sorry, folks, I don't know where it went to here. And we noted the population projection was earlier. We look at historic perspectives of the population. We're showing potentially 550 to 600,000 population for Knox County in the year 2040. And again, our regional population, when you're looking at the 6-county region, is population somewhere in the million to 1.2 million population for our region. Again, significant growth. This is just the population side. You need to consider the employment side also. And our job is to look at this population as employment growth and see where their people are going to live and work, and how is the transportation system reacting or impacted by that. So that's why we have a travel demand model. We'll not get into it at all. We break everything down into really detailed traffic zones that look at where people live and work and the interaction between all those zones. And Mike Conger, my staff, is over there. He's my modeler that helps assess that. We're very close to TDOT to begin to assess that impact of this growth on us. But our main purpose is to try to do scenario analysis. What if we build this interstate? What if we modify or add a lane to an arterial? What if a new development goes in Blount County or Anderson County and it's 1,000 new employees? What is the impact going to have on our transportation system? So that's what we're attempting to look at, attempting to address through the travel demand model. This slide is looking at in the year 2014, our existing plus committed network, where you see the red lines on here. Again, Knox County's in the middle, Anderson, Rowan, and Loudon surrounding it. The red line is shown in the first picture by Mark Daniels, the interstates where we see level of service D, E, and F during peak hours of the day 2014, if we just build what we committed to do. If you look at the year 2040, building what we existing, what plus committed projects we do, obviously there's a lot more red out there. We need to be able to respond to it by investing in our transportation infrastructure. Red is not necessarily a bad thing. It represents growth, it represents a strong economy, but there's obviously a price to all that growth in a strong economy. So we want to minimize that growth, minimize that impact. So Just very briefly, how we go through and look at we have to develop a long-range mobility plan. We do a call for projects with all of our local and state jurisdictions. We engage the public. We do an evaluation of the projects. And then we have selection criteria that we look at with our technical committee and our executive board. We sort of set those project selection criteria. Have community and continuous engagement with that. And then the executive board approves the project. Our biggest problem, quite honestly, is having you folks in this room also, think about what is the impact going to be 20 to 25 years out. I'm not going to be running the ship in 20, 25 years out. I may not be driving 20, 25 years out. It's very hard to get the community engaged and think about the impact that this community is going to need and the investment this community needs 20 to 25 years out. We're worried about the next development that comes before MPC or the next development rezoning that comes before County Commission. We're worried about that, and it's hard, again, for us as community administrators to try to get the public to think about this. That's why I really appreciate Representative Daniels and Smith putting this on, because we really need your input over the long haul on identifying and addressing our transportation needs over the long haul. Setting our priorities. These are the types of things that our executive board indicated that how we evaluate projects and what our priority needs are. From obviously safety is number one and should be our biggest concern as we move through the project review and selection project. Enhance our natural areas. Hey, it's East Tennessee, it's beautiful. We want to continue to maintain that beauty here. And I won't list them all, but again, access to businesses and services, employment, business retention, use our system more efficiently, maintain our system, invest in resurfacing, invest in intersection improvements, invest in signal timing and upgrading of signal facilities. And last, we have the funding capacity to do what needs to be done. And that is really what constrains our transportation plan. We have to identify what we think our funding capacity is going to be here 20 to 25 years out. So we can't put a high-speed metro rail line from Oak Ridge to Sevierville Gatlinburg is going to cost $2 billion. Those types of things are not anticipated or we could not even financially support. So we have to look at our financial capability both at TDOT and at the urban level for that. But briefly, our mobility plan projects, here's what's identified in the current plan, a breakdown of what is in there. You have road widening projects make up about $1 billion out of our $2.2 billion plan. New road construction, about $480 million. Road construction, $290 million, and down the line. So about road widening is about 49% of the investment that we've identified. New road construction, about 22%. These are the projects that are identified in our current mobility plan. Mobility plan project, number of projects by type. We have about 40 road reconstruction projects, road widening 38, bike pedestrian projects 31, intersection improvements 21, and down the line. Investment in technology is important, particularly with autonomous vehicles or connected vehicles. We're not sure how that's going to impact our communities, but it's going to be a high cost on state and local governments to be able to manage that, the connected autonomous vehicle. I don't think we've seen even the tip of the iceberg of that yet. And it could be, devil's in the details, but it could be a windfall and panacea for us, or it could be pure hell for us. I'm not sure. There's a website that we have that identifies all of our transportation mobility projects. It's very interactive. You can click on the icon and get details about each of the projects. And I would encourage you to stay tuned and stay involved. With that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff, and certainly law enforcement and transportation are two of the most essential roles of government, and I think one of the most basic ways that we can be friendly to business and people coming here to Knox County and our region is to have a good transportation network. And we're going to open this up for questions in just a few minutes, but I want to introduce Steve Borden. Steve Borden is the Director of Region 1 TDOT, and among other things, Steve's going to tell us how TDOT interacts with TPO and other local governments with regard to transportation planning.
Thank you, Representative Daniel. Real dangerous thing. I do not see a clock in here, and I have 15 minutes. So, Mandy, you can throw something at me when I've gone too far. The other thing is, who can show? You get this? All right. Hey, I appreciate them, Representative Smith and Representative Daniel, taking the opportunity to have us all here together. It's great to see all of my partners around the table. The truth is, transportation is not one entity by itself. It's not the TPO. It's not TDOT. It's all of us together. Each of us, as I look around the room at the mayors and the local officials and engineers that we've worked through and together for a lot of years. So for us to be successful, it's a partnership. I'll talk a little bit about what we do and what our role is, but the truth is none of it gets done without all of us together. Is there a clicker here? Yeah. Just a snapshot of what the infrastructure that we take care of. Obviously, are the assets that we have to maintain. There's 13,884 state-maintained highway miles. That changes every time we add a new road, obviously. 1,100 interstate miles, 95,000 total highway miles, 19,000 plus bridges. One of the things that we do in our role is not only maintain our own bridges and infrastructure, but we inspect all public structures. Several years ago when they had the Minnesota bridge collapse, everybody remember that? The state of Tennessee was one of the few states that was up to date on their infrastructure as far as the inspection of the bridges. We're very big on maintaining our assets. When you look at developing projects, one of the first things we have to do, we have to maintain what we have in good repair. And then the next step is to make sure our infrastructure, beyond just the regular maintenance, you think about potholes and all those things, that's one maintenance part of the infrastructure. The other thing is the resurfacing, rehabilitating bridges. You think that bridges have a life expectancy, maybe 50 or 60 years, but during that time you still have to do what? You have to do maintenance on them. Sound like your own house. If you do not do repairs on your house, I'm really bad about that, and if stuff doesn't work, staying ahead of that before it gets critical. And the other part of that is the capital improvement type projects, and we'll talk a little bit about those as well. There's welcome centers in there, truck weigh stations, interstate rest areas across the state as well that we maintain. How we were funded, I think you've already seen this slide, so I'll go through that. Obviously, a big portion of our funding comes from federal government. The rest of it comes from the state fuel tax. I think Eddie had already done that one and that one, so we're good. How we spend our money for us at TDOT. Several things that you'll see there. The largest part of the money is in highway safety and capacity. That's building that infrastructure, the larger construction projects. A lot of what you'll see in the big legislative projects. They eat up a good portion of that. Maintenance and preservation, I talked about that. That's the first piece. We're a maintenance first state, and we always have been. If you don't take care of what you have, you'll get yourself in trouble in a hurry. So it's very important that we stay in a good state of repair. Typically, our infrastructure is ranked somewhere in the top 5 nationally about every year. We'll slide between number 2 and number 5 most of the time. The thing that I'm most proud of, and I can't remember if Representative Daniel or Representative Smith, one of you, talked about the fact we're a pay-as-you-go state. We have zero debt. I remember a few years ago, number 1 was Texas. We were number 2. Our debt was 0. Theirs was something in the neighborhood of $17 billion. 19 billion now. Billion, that's with a B. That's a whole lot of money, at least in Corrigan, where I'm from. Transportation grants, there's a lot of other things in there that you see, smaller things, but the heavy part of that is in that safety and increase. Talked about the Improve Act. Improve Act was an actual decrease in taxes overall, but what it allowed the state to do is to leverage the money coming in and get it where it was needed. One of the things that happened over the years, without having an increase in our funding, obviously our buying power had greatly reduced. You were talking 50 cents on a dollar in our buying power, so we were out there struggling to maintain what we had, let alone trying to build new infrastructure to meet the needs of what we need in our communities. In the Improve Act, you can look at the total number of projects across the state, the $10 billion that we talked about earlier. If you look in Region 1, About $3 billion of that is in our region. We do have a good portion of it. There's a pie chart over there that talks about the Improve Act projects. The number, we have 29% of them. I think that's pretty good. That ranks good with the other regions across the state. And financially, money-wise, we're number 2 behind Region 3, which is the Nashville area. And obviously, how many people have been to Nashville and seen the growth they have? It's crazy. Every time I go down there, I try to go downtown and go somewhere, and there's another big development and the street's closed. I think I used to be able to get to a restaurant here, and now I can't. It's incredible when you can walk around what's going on there. The economy is good in the state. Transportation plays a key role in that, and that's one of the things that we all have to remember as partners in our community, is that that's very important. Capital improvement projects, that's some of the things that we have in there that we're going to do. That's a welcome center record. You know, a lot of things that you probably don't think about, but welcome centers, rest areas and things like that. Beyond that, interstate modernization, and that's one of the things that we really need to make sure is that we talked about congestion. You showed the slide there earlier, sitting in traffic. Well, we think about that, the inconvenience of us as motorists getting there, but there's another key component, and that is the economic component. And if you look at the state of Tennessee right now, we're one of the leading automotive manufacturing states in America. I would have never thought that 20 years ago, would you? But we are. One of the things is because we have a reliable transportation system. We have a great workforce, we're a low-tax state, and we have a reliable transportation system. What that means to most people is, most people in the industry today, you saw big warehouses, right? People have big warehouses full of stuff, you dropped it off, it sit there for months. We don't do that anymore. It's just-in-time delivery. Trucks pull in, they deliver it, it goes out of the truck, it goes on the assembly line, and produces something, right? So for us to have a great transportation system and invest in that is extremely important for our economy. It helps that. So that's one of the things, interstate modernization and reliability and safety is very important there. ITS, making our roads, I won't say smarter, but increasing the capacity that we have there. Through other ways rather than just lanes. Making it more efficient, that's one of the things that we do. Bridges, state and local, very, very important. Obviously for us is our bridges and infrastructure to invest in them. That's one of the things we've done a few years ago. I don't know, we've had some really large bridge projects in East Tennessee. What happened over the years, a lot of times we'd get the smaller ones and push the larger ones away. You think about the 33 Bridge in Union County, Henley Street Bridge, you're talking really large infrastructure bridges that have aged to 70 and 80 years old, and we were able to keep those in service, extend their life, or replace them as needed in order to make sure that we have our connectivity. Primary trade corridors, again, when you look throughout the region, it's very important that we invest in primary strategic trade corridors. Not just in the Knoxville area, but when you start going into Roane County and up through Anderson County, there's a lot of connectivity. It's very important for us to have strategic corridors that are reliable and modern and safe so they can continue to have growth in all of those areas. Economic developments, one of the things that we mentioned earlier was the SIA program. That's a very, we're working right now with Denso right now in Blount County. Got one going up in Campbell County with MAH. We have them all over the state. Typically it's around $30 million a year that we invest per year. Some years we've had more than that. In our state industrial access program. What that does is allows, if a community has got an industry that's coming in, and that industry is going to invest a great deal. Hey, let's think about Volkswagen in Chattanooga. It's a great for us to be here. It's going to produce jobs. It's going to produce a better quality of life, right? It's going to be an economic boom for the community. We go in and build that last mile, as you might say, to make sure that there's access there for that industry. So that happens throughout the state. It happens in the urban areas. It happens in the rural areas as well. Safety. That's one of the big drivers. And you'll see us, we're very aggressive in our region. I like to brag on this, but we usually do about 3 to 1 safety projects, and you see the rest of the state because it's extremely important. We actually analyze all of our safety projects. I can give you the data and how effective they are over the years because ultimately, if I'm able to take, on Alcoa Highway, we did one, actually an interim measure before the current project was underway. At that location, we reduced the accident by 100% over a 2.5-year period. Did you hear that? 100%. Somebody's life was saved, right? We're in the business about making our roads safer. So That gives you an idea. Now, Region 1, because this is where we live, I'm East Tennessee, so I'm going to focus on that. But this is the type of projects that we have right now. You'll see the capital improvement projects. It's not a large amount. Interstate modernization, that's almost over $500 million invested there. One of the things we have, we talked about it earlier, I know Jeff mentioned some areas around the Knoxville area and all the way up in Anderson County. But the modernization not only of the urban areas, the interchanges, Sharps Gap, and I'll talk about those here in a minute, but at the same time, you're talking about the rural interstates. How many of y'all travel on vacation down I-40 or I-81 or somewhere? Have you traveled in the summer if we had a lane closure with a bridge project? You didn't like us real well, did you? We did make them work all the way around the clock, don't we, Kim? But one of the things that you find out is, and we'll see the numbers a little later when I show the graphics, but 20 years ago I could shut down a lane on the interstate and I might get a mile back of it. I shut down a lane on the interstate, especially in the rural interstate when I'm talking about. During the summer months, we try not to do that. We try to work around it as much as we can. You'll see 8 and 7 mile backups. The difference is that the volumes have increased so much through traffic, and we'll be able to see that they've more than doubled during that time. ITS projects, again, more intelligent transportation, being able to get eyes out there, get message boards out there, inform motorists if we have incidents, to be able to respond to them. Quick clearance, the first accident is bad, the second accident in the queue is usually worse. So we want to be able to be efficient in what we do. As you go forward, you got bridges, huge investment there. As I've talked about before, those are the connectivity to our communities. There's a lot of places that obviously that one bridge can be the only way 5 families can get out. We want to make sure that we keep our infrastructure there. Connectivity for our communities, economic development, I've talked about that, and safety projects as well. So that kind of gives you an idea of how the money is out there, and then the cost of the projects by color. You look at the economic developments, there's not as many of the projects, but the impact is around 58% of that. So that gives you an idea of number of projects versus cost. Got a few traffic counts here, and we were actually, and I forgot to do this, I was going to put the pictures in there, the interchanges from all, I've got all the pictures. I used to do that in presentations when I do. You show Level Road when we built it, or Cedar Bluff, and then you show it now. I've got all the historic, I've got the whole interstate that way. It's a pretty amazing picture. I can remember my predecessor, Fred Corum, he was here when we started building the interstates. And I can remember him sitting there looking at me and telling me one day, he said, I was out at Cedar Bluff Road doing survey work in the middle of the field, nothing but pastures, putting in an interchange. He said, why in the world are we putting an interchange in here? Nobody's going to use it. Yeah, y'all been to Cedar Bluff Road lately? Yeah. It's amazing the growth. So when you look at the growth along our interstates, just to give you, and I've got the dots here. We're going to work on I-40 and I-75, even though they merge together downtown. And technically, we're blessed in East Tennessee. We have I-75 and I-40 running right through the middle of Knoxville, and then I-81 is also running through the middle of Knoxville. Most of us don't think about that. They're huge trade corridors. When you look at West Knoxville and the way scales, it at one time was the second busiest way scale in the nation. And I don't know where it ranks right now, but at one time it was. It's incredible the amount of freight that comes through that area. The east-west corridor, the north-south corridor, and the eastern seaboard with 81. So you have a great deal of volume of traffic, truck traffic. Right now, just working our way from west, that's out of Rockwood and Roane County, headed into the edge of Knox County. Around 43,000 vehicles is what we have right now. Downtown, you get to 166,000, but if you look, I guess this is right around out towards Paper Mill, coming into I-640, the largest count is around 198,000. That's right there near I-640 as you come through that, the corridor on I-40. You get downtown, I guess on the inner loop there, it's around 81,000. The highest count is 103,000. Now we get to the east side of Knoxville. Dexter, where does it at? Sevier County. This is all the way out to Sevier County, around 71,000. And then I-40 from I-81 over to the North Carolina line, 26,000 vehicles a day. That's 2018. Go back. This is some growth chart. This is the growth charts, right? I don't know what order's in. I haven't done this before, so I'm looking at the order. I'm not sure. So if you look up here, you're going to see growth over time. As you look back into this diagram, you'll see that we continue to grow repeatedly all the way through there. The thing is, as you look, I think, is there a pointer on here?
Center button.
The center button. Hey, that works. All right, so as you look at, these are the rural sections, and you'll see them continue to grow. And I talked about that earlier, is that if you look way out here, you may remember the World's Fair? You may remember the World's Fair? About that time, it's about 1985. Our rural sections were running below 20,000. And now you're starting to see them grow. A lot of them were in the 16, 17, 18,000, and now some of them are in 30 and 40,000. So they've doubled. Our capacity hasn't changed. We still have 2 lanes in each direction, but the amount of people on the road has obviously grown. As you look urban areas at the Knox County line with Loudoun County, and then on into Knox County, you continue to see this growth all the way through. Downtown Knoxville continue to grow. So what that means, more people are on the road, right? That means that we continue to need to work on our infrastructure. This is the projection, and this is one of the things you look at up here, and I can't remember what the total projection was, Dexter. 250, right close, just shy of 250,000 by 2030. 250,000. Right now we have 198 at our highest point.
Actually, your state, I pulled this off yesterday, it says 210,000 at 0.170, which is between April and
Yeah. Yeah, very well could be. It ebbs and flows some. So each year, it's amazing how much it will change sometimes, but yes. So you're looking at the volumes. I can remember working on that job when I did the widening project around 2001, and there was 164,000 at that same spot. And that's more than a 25% increase in just a short time. So as you can see, there's a real need to continue to grow. I-75 the same way, you're going to see the same type of increases. I'm going to slide through these pretty quick so I don't want to take up too much time. But average daily counts on I-75. You see Lenore City there, we're at 59,700 in 2030 is what our projection is. Did I miss some of these or is this the right order? I'm in it too fast. Okay. I need to go back because I'm missing something. I'm sorry. I'm not a good driver at this. They're going to take my license. Do I need to go forward from here? Okay. Is that right? I've skipped it? All right, so I've skipped stuff, so I'm going back. All right. Let me get back to where we were. Y'all should have drove this for me. Now I'm caught up. All right, Dexter says I'm caught up. One click, right? There's 18, what it was. This is what it's going to be in 2030 on I-75. See the difference? It's where we are right here. It's 50,000 in 18. 2030, you see where it goes to. Average daily count, let's go back, it's 48 right now. It's going to 56. All the way up in Campbell County, right now 37, it's going to 44. So what you're seeing is all these rural interstates are getting to that threshold where the 4-lane configuration, 2 in each direction, is going to be past its capacity. It's going to become more and more challenging. We're investing along that area right now with truck climbing lanes to help improve the capacity. Obviously, when the trucks go up the mountain, that slows that down a lot. But, did I miss I-40 altogether doing this? I did. Y'all want to go back and look at I-40? No, you're good. It's even bigger.
Yes.
I clicked it too many times, I'm sorry. All right. So projects coming up, this gives you an idea of some of the projects along those corridors that we have underway. This is widening on I-75 right here that'll come into the split to address obviously those increased amounts. This is part of the Improve Act. We also have rural ITS along these same corridors to improve our ability to move traffic and provide information. Right now, here are some other projects. If you look downtown, this is the Sharps Gap interchange. We talked about that earlier. That is a really big project. How many people have come through there in the afternoons? Obviously, we got I-75 down to one lane in each direction, basically. You have one lane ramp going north and one lane ramp coming south. Very challenging to do that. Definitely needs improvement there. And this is the interchange with 275 and 40 downtown that's also under development. And then we have ITS projects, that's ITS out east as well on I-40 to improve that. And then north, we have, obviously I talked about the Sharps Gap interchange. And then we also have a widening of the interstate from just there around Raccoon Valley Road all the way out to Emory Road. Right now, what we have planned for the Emory Road area, anybody from Powell? Anybody? Anybody's going to, okay, they're going to be diverting from Powell? Yeah, the interchange obviously is a real challenge. How many people have drove the 407 interchange? Diverging Diamond? Anybody? Yeah. It works really well. That's what we have planned for the interchange there at Emory Road. It's very efficient. I can do it very quickly. It doesn't require a lot of right-of-way. The diverging diamond system, we built the second diverging diamond in the nation at Bessemer Street. We're the second one in the country. I think the second interchange at an interstate was done at 407. For the right place, I actually have one in Upper East that we're doing too at Booths Creek.
It's very counterintuitive.
It is.
This lane, you end up somehow over there like that.
How did that happen? Yeah. Do you think it's counterintuitive? You have to be the engineer that I am. I'm looking at it on a sheet of paper when somebody said, this is what we're going to do. I'm going, we're driving the wrong way, guys. We can't do that. But it works really well. It's amazing the amount of traffic. Sevierville doesn't have to work the signals anymore up there. So, and then we also have some improvements up there at the 122 as well. And also we have the improvements on Hartford. Is this the ITS as well? ITS project. It goes all the way out to the state line. One of the things that we are doing is investing in the intelligent transportation system, obviously to make it more efficient. It's a low-cost ability to improve our efficiency. The other big one that you'll see here, this actually has two interchanges in it too. The French Broad River. That is one of those fracture critical bridges that you talk about. It is the same type of bridge that was in Minnesota. It's a deck truss. We've invested a lot. It's safe. We would not have anybody on our bridge if it wasn't. But it's getting near the end of its life as well. So what we're doing now is the plans are to replace that. In the replacement of that, we'll have to do two of the interchanges as well because of the close proximity. And I think that's all I have. All right?
Thank you, Steve. Safety, convenience, economic development, education, all of those things are so much intertwined and mixed up in transportation and involved with it. One thing, before we open up for questions and comments, I have a question, Jeff and Steve. Take, for example, we're all aware of hotspots and congested areas in our counties, and Hardin Valley is a prime example of it. There's been an astounding amount of growth there over the past 5 to 10 years. Take that, for example. It's an obvious problem situation. Hasn't been studied. What's involved in taking care of the problems we're seeing out there, and what kind of a timeline are we looking at?
I'll take the first shot at it. My allergies or something. The Hardin Valley, yes, is one of the highest growth areas in Knox County. It has been for the last almost 10 years to 15 years. And the county has invested money on Hardin Valley. There's been significant growth. I mean, with the location of the 3 schools that no one ever anticipated 20 years ago out there, and the growth at Pell State. So MPC, working with Knox County, is doing the Hardin Valley mobility study right now to identify mobility improvements out there. We should be complete with that study in the next 8 months and with several public meetings. But in the interim, TDOT is working with the TPO in improving the interchange at Hardin Valley through investments of both the county and TPO's funds and TDOT's funds. There'll be improvements there at that interchange. And then, if I'm not mistaken, the Improve Act has the Solway interchange, Oak Ridge Highway, and Pell City Parkway will be beginning preliminary engineering very soon, Steve, or Dexter out there to address that movement along out there, and then Oak Ridge Highway itself. So things are being done, but as we are all aware, transportation infrastructure takes from conception to completion anywhere from 8 to 15 plus years. And so that is our biggest challenge is the length of time it takes. So, Steve.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at several things along the corridor, obviously to make it safety. And one of the things that we do a lot of is that we leverage other programs to help improve safety and mobility. You know, sometimes you'll see what we did downtown on I-40 with efficiency there. We had this researching job, and at the same time we changed lane assignments and put shields in. Along the Mississippi corridor right now, we just did some safety improvements, closing up some of those medians and rerouting. We're working a lot with MPC, TPO, and the Knox County, and working on being able to improve mobility off of Mississippi in order to bring people out at certain locations for improved safety. Another thing that Jeff hit on was, and we talked about earlier, is that the partnerships. A lot of times, and it does help a project move along, a lot of times a local county or city will help start the initial funding. I think of the Halls Connector out on 33 near the high school there. The county came in and was a big partner with us. They did some right-of-way and engineering, and then we came and did the actual construction project. We've done that in a number of places, and that helps us get moving on a lot of the projects. But there are several things along the corridor. I think Hardin Valley is probably the third quarter of 19 is what we're hoping for a letting date for that particular project that Jeff mentioned.
Thank you. So are you saying that with regard to Hardin Valley, we're going to see letting of contracts in 19, and then conservatively speaking, when could we expect to see some completion and relief out there?
For a project like that, if it's let in the third quarter of 19, it's probably about I guess around a 24-month project is probably what I would think. So that's about the time period to be able to get that done. And like we said, we also have the Solway project interchange as well on that end. I know that affects a lot of folks when you go down, if you're headed towards Oak Ridge as well.
Thank you. I'd like to open it up for questions or comments from anyone here. Anyone have any questions? Hugh?
One thing that we opened this meeting up with was there was a whole long backlog of projects that had been on the back burner, that municipalities that prior to multiple administrations ago said these are some of the infrastructure priorities for our community that we'd like to see worked on. And I know a lot of them were bridges, but a lot of them were other road-based projects as well. Now that through the Improve Act, some more funding is available, and a lot of these things that maybe were on back burner are starting to come front burner, and there's actually some work, some research being done to look into these types of projects. If a community has grown differently, and maybe if some of the need for some of the projects has changed, how do you go about, kind of doing a touch base back to the community and say, hey, this was put on our project list 10, 20 years ago, is this still a priority for you? Is this, how do we move forward on making sure you almost need to re-recruit community areas for growth? And I'm thinking of, probably heard we've got some pushback from some residents here just in the Bearden community about some work up on Bearden Hill. And we've had a lot of feedback from the community about need to expand North Shore Drive. That's a major source of headaches and growth, primarily from the west side coming in. So I guess what I'd say is, have we also gone back to take a look at some of the more things that we're hearing a lot from our constituents right now, as opposed to just projects that were on the list 10 and 15 and 20 years ago.
And I'll start there because I was serving on transportation as we were going through the Improve Act process. And what happened was the governor went and we engaged all of our stakeholder and community partners. So every county mayor, everybody had a voice to say this project no longer needs. So when we did the Improve Act, those were projects that were identified by local communities saying this one still needs to happen. So that's what's on the list. And Steve showed you all the slide. I think it was 192 bridges in East Tennessee. East Tennessee represented the largest share of bridge projects in the state on all the regions. So we actually have more bridges in East Tennessee by far than any of the other regions. So we did kind of do some of that, but then the backlog of $2.3 billion is only state projects. John Schoonemaker, when we looked at that for Knox County had a backlog of, what was it? It was several, almost $120, $150 million just in the county of backlog road projects. That would be county projects, not TDOT projects. When you do that across the state, the backlog is even bigger. And then when you consider, as Steve was talking about, the rural interstates, to get all of our rural interstates, and I asked Paul Deggs with TDOT this question, to get all of our rural interstates up to 6 lanes just to handle, to get them from 2 lanes where you can pass cars and get around slowpokes. It's $13 billion on top of all of that just to get our rural interstates widened. So there's just a lot of projects that need to happen. But transportation at the same time has changed. Jeff alluded to this a little bit, and I'll stop here. Transportation is going to start changing, but it's about 10, 15 years down the road. So what we've done in Transportation Committee over the last few years is we've actually done a lot of stuff where the entire state of Tennessee is now actually a test pilot platform for autonomous vehicles and piloted vehicles. Audi is coming out with a car. I saw that it should be out early next year of a piloted car. So you can get in your car. Once you get up to 35 miles an hour on the interstate, you can engage the pilot. The car will take over. It has 24 sensors around it. It will keep you in speed with all the other cars around you. It will recognize if a car is going slower, move you over to get around that. The car will do it itself. There's coming a time, and Jeff talked a little bit about this, about the technology within our cities, where you will, just like you call an Uber car now and it picks you up at the street, there's coming a time when the car will pick you up and there will be no driver in it. It will pick you up, take you where you need to be, and it will go on to its next route to pick up its next driver. All of that interfaces with the 800 megahertz bandwidth that we've got going on. So the way this is going to work, long term, I'm talking now 20 years probably down the road. If I get in my car in North Knoxville and it senses that all of the cars around me are the same way and it senses that traffic is really slow in Knoxville, it will slow all of the traffic down upstream so we're not all piling up, so that that traffic has a chance to move and we're all moving instead of sitting in traffic. That's kind of the bigger picture of what's coming for our state, our communities, and the technology. So just kind of know those are all of the discussions we've been having in Nashville. We're not just looking at tomorrow, we're trying to look at what's coming down the road. So interstate travel is going to change as well as part of that. Had a gentleman the other day tell me he did the cost analysis. For him to buy a car, take care of the maintenance, fuel and everything, it cost him about $5 a mile. If he did Uber, based on just his travel around town and his traffic pattern, he spends $2.85 a mile. So there's going to the last generation, the newest generation, whatever they're called now. I'm Generation X. We were the smallest dot on there besides the greatest generation, because ours is the smallest. They are not going to be as concerned about owning a car. They want to get where they want to be, and they want to go on about whatever it is. They may ride a bicycle home or walk home or ride with a friend. So traffic is going to change, but we've got to do something in the interim to take care of what we see happening now. Steve, Jeff, you don't have anything to add to that before we move on?
I think we have to remember that the Improve Act identified 1,000 projects, but there's other funding that is the TDOT receives through the federal government, National Highway Assistance funding, that is just about the same amount of dollar amounts that are going into transportation investments throughout the state. And we have to continue to strive for this region to advocate for widening improving Campbell Station Road interchange, widening I-40 west from Lovell Road to the split. widening Palisade Parkway, making access improvements there. So there are other sources of funding that we need to be advocating for, let's not concentrate just on the Improve Act here. So, and again, that's a lot of projects, but we still want more work for Steve. What's that?
Extending, I think, where Hugh was going a little bit with this question, and before Robocar shows up and picks me up, somewhere in between those two, is there not a reprioritization process? I know there's a pipeline and you put things in the pipeline, but if you see an area like Hardin Valley growing so quickly and so immensely, and you say, geez, that ought to maybe take a little bit higher priority than the 6 lanes in the rural X. How often do you do that? Because in essence, we're going to tell our constituents, good luck for the next 4 to 6 years, and we'll see you then. But then on top of that, it slows economic development, it slows building projects. Everything basically comes to a grinding halt in one area, which just exacerbates another area. So between where we are, how much is reprioritized and how quickly, so that maybe it doesn't just follow the same timeline?
And before I hand to Steve, I was told this by TDOT, and it stuck with me. The most important 1,000 feet of roadway in any community is the 1,000 feet in front of everybody's home. So everything's a priority to everyone. They have to look at it because TDOT does, and Steve can talk about the 3-year list. Every single year they give us, as a General Assembly, a new 3-year list. We have to vote on that. That's what we're funding and saying these are the priorities. So they go through that process every year. It's just that 3-year list is constantly updated. And there have been projects fall off the list and new projects jump on just because Williamson County, for instance, is growing. I mean, good night, they're moving at 35 people a day down there, and Nashville's growing the same way. So there's projects that are constantly fluctuating, but once we fund a project, the funding isn't taken away because that project has been started.
Yeah, each year, that's one of the things we do. Each year there's going to be a new 3-year plan come out, and the decision process is there is a reprioritization. That's always looked at. New projects are still going to come, guys. The Improve Act has a large number of projects in it, the $10 billion, but over time we recognize that there's going to be new needs in communities, growth patterns. As Jeff said, there are other things that are going to become priorities, and new projects will start during that process. My 3-year plan kind of looks like a 10-year plan now, but inside of that we are shuffling things in and out, obviously, with those needs. One of the things, the way we do fund projects, and I don't know if everyone is aware exactly, but we do fund all of the construction and everything. We fund it in 3 phases. Obviously with the pay-as-you-go state, we don't want to tie up capital, say Palisade Parkway that's just now starting, that may be an $80 million project. Well, I'm several years from ever getting to the end of that. I don't want to tie up $80 million. What I do fund is the $5 or $6 million to do the preliminary engineering. Then I'll fund the next phase when I get to right-of-way, and then the next phase when I get to construction, I'm ready to go to construction. Then I'll fund the larger portion. Just like the Alcoa Highway. Alcoa Highway by itself is over $400 million. It's we got 7 projects there. But in that, each of those phases are funded individually in order to leverage our capital and be able to continue to do that. But there will be new projects as we go along. I mean, look, we have a lot of different avenues that we fund projects. There's safety improvement projects that we do, that we get money from federal highway to do that as well. So, we're going to continue to analyze our infrastructure. There'll be new projects that the TPO will look at priorities for those with other communities, with cities and counties that are our partners that are going to come to us, and we're going to be able to try to strategically invest in those as well.
Thank you. Quick question. I see on this sheet there's orange root question mark. I think we all know what happened to it. But 16 years ago, the TPO approved the orange route. It was wanted, the state, TDOT was for it. There was opposition from some of the folks that lived out there, and a former city of Knoxville mayor who wanted a no bill. And it died due to lack of funding during the Bredesen administration. So it's gone. But we still have a 17-mile section of the interstate between 640 and the split that carries 3 interstate load 814075, about 40 to 50% of your through traffic are trucks. Is there anything being considered to come up with some alternate corridor to get the through traffic out of the local traffic mix, as most other cities have already done?
And that's the purpose of today. Because the reason we did this is to set the stage for everyone going back into their community, talking, engaging with their neighbors, you know, and us engaging with our constituents all the way up. You know, that's why Mayor Terry Frank is here. As a region, we've got to start deciding what's going to be our priority. Is it to save and funnel everything down Interstate 4081 into Knoxville? Do we need to be looking at a regional transportation beltway, if you will, so that growth continues to go into our other areas? That's really what the purpose of today is. It's to set the stage for here's where we are, but as we look ahead and everybody looks at growth coming, what do we want as a community? Big C, regional community, what's going to be our priorities? And we've got to start identifying those. TDOT and TPO can only do so much. You know, they can't engage with every single one of our communities, but we can. From Dr. Briggs, myself, Hugh, you know, Larson, the mayor, John, George, we each have constituencies, but then you go outside of that, our fellow legislators and county commissioners in other communities have a way to engage with their constituents, you know, business leaders, you know, talking to your employees, them going home and talking to their families. Everybody has to start engaging at one time. That's why we put the orange right on there, is just to spur this conversation about the global, our community global, you know, transportation plan.
One thing I would applaud you, Representative Martin Daniel, for doing this today, because several years ago, what TDOT told me was that they have a finite number of dollars, and they're going to put them in the communities that want them. They don't want to go to court and fight to give somebody something they need if somebody else will sit there with an open hand and take it with a smile. And I know TDOT wanted this badly, and it didn't happen. And today, I don't think there is any long-term plan on the table to address the congestion that is only going to get worse. And I pulled these numbers off of the TDOT website yesterday, and it was 210,000 actually on that one section. And that's a little, not too far off from what we actually were projecting 20 years ago. So it's a challenge, and I really do appreciate you putting this out, but it's going to require local leaders coming up to quantify the problem, and so that it's not emotional, it's fact-based, and then come up with alternate solutions. And we're behind in this region because of some of the sins of the past.
And just so everybody knows, the way this works also, if federal funds are used for any road project, this is a generalization, it's fairly close, but it adds 4 years and 40% to every road project because of the additional federal requirements. If we do it on a state level, on average, you can cut 4 years and about 40% off the cost. So us coming up with a plan, funding it ourselves, means we can kind of just tell the federal government, go away. You know, the more we can do that, the faster we can move. If we're waiting on the federal government, up until 2 years ago, they didn't even have, they were doing what was called continuing resolutions. So we didn't know from quarter to quarter how much money we were actually going to get from the federal government, which kept TDOT in limbo. They actually came up with a 5-year plan. However, there's now talk that that 5-year plan may not be fully funded. So we're probably going to be back in the same situation of, are we going to get money from the federal government, yes or no? How much are we going to get? We won't know when we're going to get it until we get it, and then we can't make plans. So it becomes very chaotic right now, waiting on Washington. I told the group earlier I was with, right now, I honestly don't think Congress could fix a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. They're so dysfunctional up there. We've got to get control back away from Washington and start making decisions for ourselves. We can't wait on DC to solve this for us.
Amen. And thank you all again for doing this. This is more of a question for Jeff. One of the slides you had, the kind of percentages of funding, and one of them I noticed was the road widening. Road widening was at 49%, and intersections were at 3%. It seems to me, just one of the things that's going on right now is with North Shore, which is a state road, and at Lions View, like these intersections are these big bottlenecks. And why is intersections such a lower price? Like there's less money for intersections than for road widening.
By the way, Mayor Jacobs, thank you for coming out today. I know you've got to sneak out.
It's Jeff. You're not shaking it. I'm not. I can answer.
I mean, a lot of the intersection improvements are being addressed through road widening throughout these major arterial corridors and that, and through signalization, which sometimes signalization will include additional turn lanes involved with that, so just specific intersection projects were not identified as part of our long-range mobility plan, but you're absolutely right. There's a two-lane roadway can handle a lot of traffic. It's where it's your intersections where you bog down. You have to stop where your signals are. If you can make improvements at intersection, you can have a lot more capacity through a two-lane facility. So I think through congestion mitigation and spot improvements, we can do a better job of maintaining the efficiency of our transportation system. I think Steve wanted to also address, well, Wes stepped out, but the corridor studies.
Yeah, a couple of things, and to your point too, I think when you look at the raw numbers financially sometimes, a corridor project in widening is extremely expensive. The surgical ability to go in and improve intersections, which we do a lot of with the TPO and also with our local counties and cities as well as TDOT, is less expensive, I guess. So sometimes you may have a lot of projects like that. And we do have projects that are now underway. We're doing survey work for Kingston Pike and North Shore, that whole area. So we have a project that's underway now. But you'll see a lower cost if you're just looking at an intersection versus a 5-mile road, obviously, with that infrastructure. One thing that is going on, Wes is back now, as far as one of the questions you were asking about, there are 2 studies that are ongoing right now on 40 and 75 corridor. They completed the 81 a couple of years ago. So from those, there will be recommendations once those are complete, which may address some of what you're talking about as well.
Just add to that, I think it's going to be important as the consultants that TDOT has retained for these I-40 and 75 corridor studies. You need to, when they have community meetings, you need to be out there and have your voices heard. Our organization updates our mobility plan every 4 years. I mentioned this earlier. It's hard as nails to get people to come out to community meetings anymore. We're using social media, but if we don't hear from folks regarding transportation needs and infrastructure needs, we'll make the best decisions ourselves, and based on our recommendations and that, and the executive board will do that too. But we all need to hear from all walks of life here in Knoxville. And that means getting the word out. And these corridor studies are really important first step because they'll be underway and completed in the next 12 to 18 months. And they'll feed into our long-range transportation plan.
I promised everyone that we would have you out of here at 2:30, so I think we want to wind it up. Representative Smith and I and Mr. Borden and Mr. Welch will be here afterwards if you'd like to talk. Also, you can reach us through email if you have any questions. Yes, please just email me or Steve or Jeff. I'm glad to see you. I wouldn't purport that we have solved any problems here today, but hopefully we provide you with information that you can use so that we can work together to ensure that we have proper planning for a better transportation network in our region. Thank you for attending. We appreciate you being here. Bye-bye.
It's complicated and expensive.
That's it.